enough. In the workshop this week, well, we're going back in time to take a look at a couple of little jobs I did last year where I got the job done by using a knockdown panel fixing in a slightly unusual way. That's coming up next. So if you're in the trades at all, one of the things that's going to come up fairly regularly, especially early on in your career, is boxing in. Boxing in is where you contain usually a service of some kind, gas or water pipes or electrical cables, and you just don't want it to be visible, so you put a little box around it. MDF was fantastic for this because there's effectively no end grain to show. I haven't done much of this type of thing for a long time, but I've done quite a lot of work last year for a client who'd had a lot of work done in their home, and they had a couple of bits and pieces that they needed sorting out. Now, these were quite awkward because normally when you box stuff in, you put a box around it and it's done, fitted and forgotten. These two items were the consumer unit, their fuse box, was very exposed. All the wiring was very kind of, they have young children, and it wasn't great, wasn't pretty, and it needed tidying up. But obviously you need access to this, and because of the position of it, it was actually under a staircase, so it had an angle to it. It wasn't really practical to put a door on this, so I had to come up with some way of making this whole thing removable. Now, you're not going to be doing that every day, but it does need to happen periodically. The second part of this job for this client was to box in some pipe work. The sort of manifold for their underfloor heating needed to be sort of contained somehow, but again, it needed to be accessible for servicing. Now, normally when you have something, a small slim cabinet that needs to be removable, you either have to have those funny little hooky connectors that drop into a bracket, but I thought I'd try and come up with something slightly different. So last year I used a product called Buttonfix for the first time. I'd known about the product for a while but never really found a use for it, and I was fitting a kitchen for actually the same client that I'm doing this work for now. It's a very clever, very simple little knockdown panel fixing, and I used it just for that, to fix sort of panels to a kitchen carcass. I've got to admit, I don't do a great deal of that sort of work, so although I bought a couple of bags of these things, I haven't really used them since. But one of the benefits of this kind of system is that it would be ideal for this kind of removable carcass. Unfortunately, one of the niggles that I have with them is that you need to align them quite carefully. And obviously in a period property, a Victorian house, the walls are a bit all over the place, especially this one where they've had some work done. And it would be quite hard to align the button to the bracket from the carcass against the wall. But I figured that maybe if we used a simple wooden batten and fixed the bracket to the batten, then that would give us a bit more of a fighting chance. We could fix the batten to the wall, and then we could fit the carcass to the bracket more easily. Let's pick this story up last year when I'm in the workshop starting to cut the material for the first bit of boxing in. For awkward little jobs like this, I template the space, cutting my MDF offcuts carefully so they match both the length and the angle. Then I can move on to the cover, using the template again and cutting the 6mm MDF to match. The clients have opted to paint this themselves, so I'm using dominoes and glue to keep the box unblemished. With the glue dry, I can clamp the frame against the template and pin a piece of strip wood across it to keep it square, while I offer up the slim timber battens to either side and fix them on with Buttonfix Type 2 fixings.
And with the front cover removed, I can pre-drill through the battens. On site, I can offer up the box into position as the main incomer, or distribution board by the way, not the fuse box or consumer unit as I said earlier, and drill through our pre-drilled battens to mark the wall. Then enlarge those holes, plug and screw the battens down. Of course, nothing goes quite to plan in an old property, and I have to make another couple of holes at the left-hand side to get a decent fixing. But with the box firmly fixed, I can attach the cover, simply gluing and pinning it into place with lost head pins. Doesn't look like much, does it? The other L-shaped cabinet I'm joining with dominoes, and once clamped up and out of the way, I'm rounding over the outer facing edge of the top with the router, finishing off with some abrasive to remove any cutter marks. With the L-shaped body out of clamps and inverted onto the top, I'm again using Buttonfix Type 2 fixings to secure it in place, and as before I'm using slim timber battens on the two outside edges. On site, the cabinet is held in position and the outside edges marked on the wall. Then the top's removed and the top of each batten is marked. Then the battens are removed and the inside edges of the cabinet marked. Now with the cabinet out of the way, we can use these marks to fix the battens in place, as before drilling through them to mark the position, enlarging the holes and plugging them, then screwing the battens to the wall. After a quick hoover up, the body of the cabinet simply clips in place, and the top clips onto the body to finish things off nicely.
So that's it for this week. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found it useful. I always find it interesting to go back and take another look at jobs I've done in the past. The Buttonfix job was really, really useful, really interesting. I don't have a huge amount of use for the product, but when you need it, it's exceptionally useful. And actually combining it with a simple timber batten made this job so much easier, so much more straightforward. As I say, I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you found it useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up, share it freely, and please consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. Hey, just check back on a Friday when there's always something new up at noon. I want to take a second to thank my Patreon supporters. You can support me directly through patreon.com/10-minute workshop. Quite a few people have done that now, and I really do appreciate the support you give me. It really does help. That and the monetization has really helped. It starts to make it much more worthwhile. So thank you everybody who does support me through the Patreon process. I do appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you all next time. Take care.